But first, could we start anywhere else? The big news of the weekend, Drew Brees officially called it a quits, hanging up his cleats, and has officially retired from the NFL after 20 years, an illustrious career, 15 years with the New Orleans Saints, 5 years with the Chargers, and he had a beautiful way of displaying it and announcing it with all 4 of his kids live on an Instagram video. And that's just the most beautiful way to send off a really classy individual that represented himself well in the city of New Orleans. But it's so interesting because in sports, we always talk about common platitudes, and specifically when we talk about the underdog, right? There's always all these players throughout any sport, but especially in football, that we talk about with regard to being an underdog and who has the best underdog story. And we typically refer to someone that's had to overcome a lot, battle adversity, has been overlooked, overachieved, has been looked down upon their entire career, right? And they typically have to go through an arduous path to get to where they're at. And there's nobody in the NFL and in sports that truly epitomized what it meant to be an underdog like Drew Brees. Drew Brees is someone that was not supposed to get to where he was and have the type of career that he had in the NFL. This was a guy who was completely overlooked in college at Purdue. He only received 2 other Power 5 offers in college. Kentucky was the only other school. Kentucky and Purdue were the only teams to offer him a scholarship, along with some Ivy League schools. And what's impressive is that this was a guy who, throughout his entire career, was criticized for his height, being just 6 feet, the lack of arm strength. These were all the qualities that scouts and teams were concerned about and said that he didn't possess. That he didn't possess the arm talent, that he didn't possess the requisite height to be able to be efficient and effective in the NFL. And when he was drafted with the first pick in the second round of the NFL draft back in 2006, or back rather in 2001 by the Chargers, obviously went to the New Orleans Saints in 2006. But when he was drafted by the Chargers, he wasn't the prototypical quarterback. He wasn't the 6'4" behemoth of an individual who could see over defenses. This was a guy who was 6 feet. It was unprecedented to draft a quarterback that was 6 feet. Now, he set all-time records at Purdue, 2-time AP Offensive Player of the Year. But when he got to the NFL, he wasn't putting up these gaudy numbers that we have grown to appreciate and to see and to be accustomed to when it comes to Drew Brees. We didn't see that upon his arrival with the with then the San Diego Chargers. And he was paired with LaDainian Tomlinson, and we weren't sure if this was a guy who was going to really make it as a star and a starter in the NFL, or would just kind of dwindle into the background and be a glorified role player and backup quarterback. And the Chargers certainly didn't think so. And they offered to try. They didn't want to franchise tag him, because they drafted Phillip Rivers in 2004. They wanted him to take over the reins. And it's kind of serendipitous timing that the two of them opted to retire the same exact season. And then upon Drew Brees' arrival in New Orleans, the entire landscape of the NFL shifts forever. It shifts forever, because this is a guy who inherited not only a losing franchise that had only achieved 7 winning records, 7 winning seasons over a span of 38 years, from 1967 to 2005. And he was inheriting not only a losing franchise, but a team and a region that was beleaguered and reeling from Hurricane Katrina. That's the enormous pressure that this man, standing 6 feet tall, had to inherit after after a rocky start in San Diego. And he arrives in New Orleans with all these expectations. And more importantly, now a city is rallying behind him. This was a guy who was instrumental in helping getting the city through Hurricane Katrina. And what's amazing is that despite all of that, and despite his last season with the Chargers, he tears his labrum and damages his rotator cuff. Is totally expected not to perform. And he gets to New Orleans and he becomes a 13-time Pro Bowler, ends up leading the NFL all time in passing yards, second in completion percentage, second in total touchdowns, a 2006 Walter Payton of the Year, Man of the Year award winner for his assistance with Hurricane Katrina. A tremendous father, a tremendous leader, a tremendous role model for the city, for the organization. And he literally, along with the arrival of Sean Payton in 2006, resuscitated and revived this New Orleans Saints franchise and the city of New Orleans. That's what this man brought. And it's amazing that he had been overlooked for all this time. It's amazing what someone can persevere, how they can persevere when they just believe in themselves and when they just come in with a positive spirit, with a positive attitude, a willingness to learn, approaching everything with open arms. He was a sponge, soaking up as much knowledge as he could and trying to leave his imprint on every single player. He's obviously left an indelible mark with this franchise. And it's just amazing to me that this is a guy who just won when he was in New Orleans. And in his first season with the Saints in 2006, again, this franchise, this city, just suffered a devastating hurricane, and he leads them to their first ever NFC Championship game appearance. He obviously wins the Super Bowl in 2009 over Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts, the first and only Super Bowl won by the New Orleans Saints. He won Super Bowl MVP. And this was a guy who was just overlooked time and time again. And it's amazing what we've grown to, or what we've grown to appreciate about him is not the lack of stature, but is how accurate he is. This is a guy who has the record for 4 out of the top 5 best percentage seasons for completion percentage, the most accurate seasons passing the football, and Drew Brees holds those marks. In 2018, he completed 74.4% of his passes. 2019, finished with the second highest completion percentage in NFL history, 74.3. 2017 finished with the third highest percentage in NFL history at 72.4%. And then also, he's got the 5th highest in 2011, 71.2%. This is a guy who no one said could look over the top of defenses. And it's amazing to see him overcome and to arguably be the greatest and most accurate, I wouldn't say the greatest, but the most accurate thrower of the football in NFL history. He's mastered the intermediate throws, mastered the short throws, has an all-time quick release, does not hold on to the ball long. Tremendous leader, tremendous father, and more importantly, he trailblazed a path for future shorter quarterbacks in the NFL. Guys like Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Tua Tagovailoa, these guys would not have been drafted if it wasn't for Drew Brees. And Drew Brees shifted the narrative from saying that if you're a shorter quarterback, if you measure shorter at the combine, that you can go on to actually be grand in stature and achieve tremendous success. Because the scouts, when they looked at Drew Brees, they thought he was too short. And boy, were they flawed, and they erroneously misjudged this guy because not only were they inaccurate on their report, but they were inaccurate in the fact that they were looking at the most accurate NFL quarterback ever to play the position. And it's just incredible to see this guy persevere, overcome. And obviously we saw the recent report with Taysom Hill signed the 4-year, $140 million contract, although each season can be voided. So how much is he really holding on to? I'm not sure. I've never been a big believer in Taysom Hill, especially at that type of price you're paying for. I don't see that. And of course, they're working on a new deal with Jameis Winston, who I believe in a lot more. But Drew Brees transcended the game of football, both on and off the field. Tremendous leader, great role model, family man, inspiration, not only to other football players, but to an entire city and region that was looking to be rescued. And he literally rescued and uplifted this beleaguered city upon his arrival.